the thing is, if you really want to break out of middle management, I think middle management is one of the hardest areas to be in your career because you're taking on a bunch of work. You're both managing up and down and a team and cross functionally, and you're still striving to kind of get to the next level, right? And so it's probably one of the more stressful times in your life. But I've definitely noticed. I noticed that with me personally first, because when I really stepped into this was at Salesforce, honestly, many years ago. And the people who kind of rose to the next level was a lot about their communication skills, their ability to convince people at the next level of something.
Welcome to another episode of Speaking of Success. My guest today is Robin Daniels, a three-time CMO and a high-energy, high-impact leader who has worked for some of the most iconic tech brands of the last 20 years, including LinkedIn, WeWork, Salesforce, and Box, to name just a few. Now, Robin is not just a powerhouse in the tech industry, he's a deeply human individual who genuinely cares about people, mentoring them to reach new heights and making work a fun, inspiring place to be. Robin's roadmap for a happier, healthier, and more fulfilled life and career emphasizes the importance of people, purpose, and positivity. He believes that relationships are the cornerstone of any meaningful work experience that provides joy and growth, especially during challenging times. Enjoy the conversation. Robin, welcome.
Spencer, good to see you too, man.
Great to finally get you into the podcast.
You made it work.
So we're here to talk about what's the impact that public speaking can have on your career. And I love starting with asking people, where did it all start? Like, when was the moment that you first started to feel the power of building that skill of public speaking?
Yeah, I mean, so much I write about on LinkedIn and other forums. It started with some deep pain because I had a really horrible experience. Basically, I mean, my story is I've been a tech nerd my whole life, but I also love communication and marketing and storytelling. I kind of had two paths in life that I could choose from, that I wanted to choose from. I love technology and I loved entertainment. I always thought I could go into TV, movies, and so on, and mostly because I love storytelling. And by how life works, I ended up doing marketing, and a lot of marketing, of course, is the combination. And I do marketing for tech companies, so I get to combine my two passions, tech, but also storytelling, because a lot of marketing really is storytelling. But my journey into becoming, I would say, a better communicator, because I think it's a never-ending journey. I don't think you ever wake up one day and say, I'm done becoming and learning how to be a great communicator. It changes over time. But my journey, so when I was 21, I bought a one-way ticket from Copenhagen to the US, to San Francisco, because I wanted to be with all the nerds of the world. So I didn't have a job, I didn't have a place to stay, I didn't know anybody, I'd never been to California. I just thought, I'm going to go. And I kind of hustled my way to get some jobs. But it was also right during the time of the dot-com implosion. So the first year was rough, lots of like layoffs and companies that went under. I finally got a job in 2001 at a bigger company that was more stable. It was called Veritas. It was based in Mountain View in California. And I was hired as a product marketing manager, kind of a junior product marketing manager. And 2 months into my tenure, I was asked by my boss, the VP of product marketing, if I could go to Orlando, Florida, to give a presentation on my product line, what's coming in our product line, to our sales team. It's like 300 grizzled sales vets, who are very opinionated and, usually at least to get inspired and so on. And so I went there, and I kid you, probably one of the worst moments of my career and my life. I was so nervous, first of all, to present in front of these 300 people who basically knew way more about the product and the company and the market than I did. And I felt very judged, standing in front of them, and I was shaking, and I was sweat pits under my arms, and I didn't look at the audience at all. I was just looking at the screen, trying to read kind of my bullets, and it was so horrible. even had somebody come up to me afterwards, like, "Hey, are you okay?" It hasn't gone well when somebody asks you that. But so from that experience, it was so painful, but I also thought to myself, because I've always admired people who can speak really well. Like, I think we all have, maybe not consciously, but unconsciously, we maybe admired people. So I said to myself afterwards, never again. I never want to have this experience again. And so I went on this journey to become like the best speaker that I could become, just by learning and learning and learning. And so I did a couple of things. Naturally, I read a lot of books about public speaking. That's kind of the obvious one. Then, secondly, I started taking a bunch of courses on public speaking. Some were facilitated by the company because they would offer them different courses to different people. And I would also do some courses at other, like Stanford and Berkeley and other kind of like professional institutions and so on. But the thing that really made the biggest difference, I would say, in my journey was I actually went and took acting lessons. I took acting lessons at Stanford, and I took acting lessons also at Berkeley, uh, because I've always admired actors who stand on a stage or in TV and movies and so on, who can command such a presence. And it's usually through a combination of course, charisma, but also storytelling, that combination. And I thought, just like, if I can learn, because I think the best presenters that I admire, they do two things. They both entertain and they inform. One without the other is a little hollow. I've seen great presenters who are entertaining, but their substance is quite hollow, or empty. And so you might be enjoying it in the moment, but it's not, you won't really remember much of it beyond that. And then the reverse of course is true as well. You have people who are presenting amazing information, but if their presentation skills suck and it's just not entertaining, or like just not captivating anyway, then it's not going to have the impact it has. So I always thought, I want to be able to combine entertainment and information into kind of one beautiful package in my own personal way, because I don't want to be the kind of person who just kind of mimics. I've seen people, oh, you should be like Steve Jobs or like this person or Obama or whoever it is. I'm like, no, you got to find your own style. It doesn't work trying to mimic somebody else's style. You can be inspired by them and learn from them, but find your own style. And so anyway, so acting lessons for me was probably the most important, because I learned how to use my voice, my body, the way I stand, the way I carry myself, the way I use I speak sometimes loudly, sometimes softly, depending on what point I'm trying to make. But a lot of it comes when I've seen actors, especially on stage, so impressive how they can command the presence of a whole room and the attention of a whole room. I've always admired that. So that was the biggest game changer for me. That was my path towards this journey of becoming a great communicator.
Yeah. And how old were you at that point when you started doing the acting classes?
I was 20. I was 22 at that point in time. And since then, I mean, I try to keep it sharp. It's kind of like, yes, once you've got the fundamentals, I think it's kind of like riding a bike. You hopefully won't forget it. But there's so many things you can continually learn, especially as the way we communicate also changes. Now we're doing a lot of online, of course, and there's different ways, and you have to kind of modify, I think, your communication style. I actually went to my son's school. My son is 18 now, so he's off to college after summer, which is super fun. But I went to his school 2 years ago. He went to an international school in Copenhagen, Denmark, and they had invited parents in for 2 days of what they called life days, where they would invite parents in to teach them life skills, and many people come in and teach them about finance and economics and blah blah blah, all kinds of things. And I came in there and I gave a 2-hour session on communication skills, because I've always felt communication skills, mastering communication skills is the most important thing that can be a game changer in our life. I can, without a doubt, say that within my 20 plus years of experience in working in different companies, I've succeeded because of my communication skills, or I failed because of my communication skills. My ability to communicate at various different levels, either up, across, or even down, in different ways, because you can't just treat all those different communications the same. You have to learn how to do it at various ways. Like the way you communicate to a CFO versus somebody who's in marketing, very different, obviously, right? So you have to learn how to communicate, but it's not just about how it affects your career, impact your relationship with your friends, impact your relationships with your spouse, or your ability to find a partner, and it's like, it affects everything. Communication skills is like the foundation. I think if you ask any, like this, any relationship or couple who've been together for a long time, and you say, what's your secret? They nearly always say good communication between us, right?
Yeah.
So it's just like it's obvious that it's a secret sauce behind so much of life that you have to learn how to master. You might not ever be extroverted, loving it all the time, but you have to learn how to master it. You can't really, I think, succeed as well as you probably could if you don't.
Yeah. And I love this the story and the connection with acting. I know I've definitely seen it the last few years. I've been
Mm.
studying improv comedy, so I've been doing improv comedy classes, and I think
Yeah.
like echoes things that I've heard when I've spoken to other
Mhm.
speakers, that it's almost like you need this little jigsaw puzzle of different
Mhm.
types of speaking and communication. So yeah,
Yeah.
there is the classic I need to stand up and talk in front of somebody,
Mhm.
but also learning about the world of movies and how they structure things and how they use
Yeah.
transitions and jump cuts.
That's
And
right.
so I
That's right.
think it's having this ability to say, I'm going to learn about communication from not
Mhm.
just how do I write an email or how do I put a,
Mhm.
yes, it's important, but at the
Yeah.
same time, it's
Yeah.
look to like this wide range of topics, because I think that's where the skill starts
Mhm.
to become really strong over time.
That's right. And then as the more as you practice it as well, and I'm sure you know it's you learn like the little beats of a presentation. That's when you get to the next level, like how to modify it so you can captivate the attention of an audience by knowing when to change the tempo, the mood, the point you're trying to make, even how you look at people, like I see a lot of presenters, they never look at the audience, right? They're too nervous about that. You got to connect, right? But you don't want to connect too long, right? Because you don't want to like stare at one person creepily for a minute. That's just weird, right? Because I see that happen too.
Yeah.
You've probably seen, but there's oh, let's get to a Q&A section, and then somebody asks a question, and that presenter is only talking to that person, even though there's 100 people in the room. It's like absolute wrong thing to do, right? Acknowledge the person, and then you still have 100 other people that you want to kind of talk to in the room, right? All these things I think you learn over time because you want to make people feel included. The whole art of I think a good presentation is making people feel understood, valued, included, and so on. And that takes a little bit of skill, right? You want to not just look at the slides or wherever you want. You don't want to just look at one person. You want to like figure out the magic of what makes this work. And the best presenters I've seen, they really know how to do that well, but in their own way. Like again, I'm not a big believer in model because everyone is so unique. I mean, I worked for a guy called Aaron Levy, who was the CEO of a company called Box that went public about 10 years ago. Super young guy, one of the most charismatic, energetic speakers I've ever seen, but very like weird compared. If you were to compare all the things that he does on stage versus like the classic, this is what makes a great speaker, he would probably fail all that. He speaks too fast. He runs around. He doesn't stand like, but he makes it work because he's so charismatic and everyone loved him as a speaker. So the point is you got to find kind of what works for you.
Yeah.
Because he was a little bit of a nerd and introvert, and he's like, so he like had to find his own way of doing it versus somebody like a Mark Benioff from Salesforce, who I work for, just like very commanding, kind of like classic, knows how to look people in the eye, goes over to them and shakes their hand and then talks around, very different style, but it can all work. It can all work, obviously.
Yeah. And how does it? Because you've mentioned Box and Salesforce, but you've also worked
Mm,
for LinkedIn and WeWork,
mm,
and
yeah,
let's face it, some of the biggest iconic tech brands in the last 20 years.
yeah,
When you think about your journey, and let's focus more like
mm,
on internal presenting,
yeah,
you
yeah,
start
yeah.
at a certain level, whether you get up to like mid management, and
Hmm.
then you start to have to present your QBR or your project update, but
Yeah, yeah,
then
yeah.
you're suddenly invited into the senior management meetings, and then
Hmm.
it goes up a level again.
Hmm.
So,
Hmm.
can you speak to a bit of like what are some of the lessons that you learned
Mm.
along the way and on that journey?
Yeah, I would say, I mean, the thing is, if you really want to break out of middle management, I think middle management is one of the hardest areas to be in your career because you're taking on a bunch of work. You're both managing up and down and a team and cross functionally, and you're still striving to kind of get to the next level, right? And so it's probably one of the more stressful times in your life. But I've definitely noticed. And I noticed that with me personally first, because when I really stepped into this was at Salesforce, honestly, many years ago. And the people who kind of rose to the next level was a lot about their communication skills, their ability to convince people at the next level of something. Because I always think that when I think about because I've managed teams for a long time, and I've also been managed myself, and I've noticed this trend, that the times I've been coached on something, and now that I'm, been coaching people and managing people for a long time as well, 90, if not like 95% of the times that I'm giving feedback on something that of how to get somebody to the next level, it's usually on their softer skills, honestly. Very rarely is it on their hard skills. I mean, that happens sometimes, right? If they're not, but you hire people usually because they have the right hard skills. Usually the hard skills will get you in the door, the soft skills will get you to the next level. And so often when we say soft skills, let's be honest, a lot of it's about communication. Oh, there's some friction between you and this person, or the way you're communicating to the senior leadership team, they don't really get it. They don't have the confidence in you, or whatever it is. And so much of it's about, how do you coach somebody through getting the confidence, the kind of the experience, and actually being confident presenting information, and creating alliances across different levels of the organization so you can get to the next level. This is also I'm so passionate about this. I write about this a lot as well because I'll say the number one question I have gotten over the last many, many years of leadership is how do I get to the next level? And I always say there's kind of three things that you have to do. Number one is you have to uh, crush the goals that you have. And not just once, because everyone can have a great quarter and kind of lean into it. You have to do this consistently over many, many quarters. Now, what does that require? That requires you to have clarity on what goals you have in the first place, right? And that means from clear communication with you and your manager, what goals do you have? Because it's impossible to hit your goals if you don't know what the hell you're aiming for. So that's number one. Number two is that you have to act as if you're at the next level. So if let's say you're a senior manager and you want to get to become a director, or a director and you want to become a VP, uh, start modeling yourself after what people are doing at the next level. Take on the responsibility of what those kind of people are doing, even if you haven't been given the official title yet. People are always inspired by those people who step up, right? They take on more responsibility. They're more bold in their decision making. They're more clear in their communication. All these kind of things. When you think about the difference between oftentimes an IC and maybe let's say director level or VP level, a lot of times comes down to communication skills, the ability to rally people, even if they don't work for them. A VP, I would expect, for example, they might be the VP of a certain area, but if you're at that level, you should be able to rally people across the company around certain goals and things. That comes a lot from persuasion, communication, and so on, right? Not just from your title, but the ability to actually do that. So that's number two, being able to act as if you're at the next level. And then number three, is really around getting a chorus of support around your chorus of people who are your champion, fight for you, will stand with people, and connect with people in many, many different ways. That can be up higher people level people than you. It could be your peers. It can even be some people who might be more junior in the organization, but who have maybe outsized voices. And so the point here is not to be. It's not about being political or trying to kiss ass. It's about making sure that you're creating an alliance around you where people understand what a value add you are, that you're taking on more responsibility, that you're leaning into. I can always see when it comes to kind of promoting people, these decisions are never singular. It's always like a group of people sitting in a room saying, "Hey, should we promote Joe? Joe, yeah, he's nice, but I'm not really sure, what's he doing? What projects have you been working on in the last 6 months?" I can always tell that this conversation is not going to go well. Or like, "Oh, let's talk about, Susan. Oh yeah, Susan, she's great. Yeah, my team loves working with her. She's amazing. She's always like everybody wants her on her projects and her team." You can always kind of tell. A lot of it comes from has this person been able to create a coalition around them where people are fighting for them, and a lot of that comes from the communication style. So I'm oftentimes mentoring people. Say, and it's one of the things that I did when I was first coming up through the ranks of my career is reach out to people who you admire or you want to learn from, and how to lean into you and your career. So, for example, if you're in sales or in marketing, uh, uh, creating a good alliance with your VP of finance or your CFO is not a bad idea. But if you just reach out and say, "Hey," because a lot of times people are busy, "Can I spend 10 minutes learning about your how you look at finance and blah blah blah," they'll be like, "Okay, I'm busy," and so on. I've got to focus on my thing. But if you appeal to their ego a little bit more, say, "Hey, I really admire the way you communicate in this here, and I would love the way that you think about the strategy of how finance is going to impact the way of our business. I would love to just kind of learn a little bit from you. Do you mind, can I spend 30 minutes buying you coffee? Just kind of like most people would say yes to that in a heartbeat because people in generally are good people. They want to pay it on. They want to invest in the next generation, but they also have egos, right? So if you appeals a little bit to that, you can learn so much from the people you admire. So find people, 5, 10 people in your organization where they have skills that you admire. Maybe it's communication skills or other skills, and figure out how to kind of learn from them. That will also help you get to the next level. Even that will be critical to how you actually succeed in that endeavor as well.
Yeah. Yeah, I love it, and it makes me. You'll appreciate this. You're a storytelling guy as well, but it makes me think like every hero in every story has a mentor and friends and allies, and I think
Yeah.
that's the almost like it feels like the secret sauce to doing this journey because you spoke
Mhm.
about two things which are kind of connected. One is okay, if you want to be a director or a VP, you've got to
Mhm.
start doing that role.
Mhm.
And if you want to get better at communication, as you know, one of the best things to do is start doing lots of communication. But communication is such a loaded thing because
Yeah.
you have to make yourself vulnerable in front of the
Yes.
people that may be the ones deciding whether to give you a promotion or not. And if it goes wrong, so I think like you need your friends and allies. I think like
Yeah.
you have to find somebody to say, hey, yes, could you mentor me?
Yeah.
And because
Yeah.
you're really good at it. But also, if you know that your colleague is running a meeting and then saying,
Yeah.
okay, can you give me 10 minutes at the end of the meeting? Because, yeah, I think like standing up in front of a group of people is one of the most kind of situations that makes you the most vulnerable in a place
Yeah.
where you never want to be seen to be failing. Like it's,
And it's hard, and I still get nervous. And actually, one of the things
we
when
all
I
do.
teach when I teach a communication course, and I do fairly frequently actually, is nerves are a good thing because I actually don't like presenters who are too casual, and you can tell they don't really care. Like you wanna. I believe that you should come across as wanting a good outcome out of this, right? And so I like presenters who you can tell they care, that they're trying, right? The ones who are just kind of winging it too much, I'm like, I'll tell you a story. So I joined WeWork, and we were doing our global summit for 10,000 employees, and I was then asked to co-present to the whole company. And it was my 18th day in the company, 18th or 19th, 18th. I think it was the 18th day of the company. So I hadn't been there very long. And I said, of course, yes, because what? Of course, I'm going to say yes to that. So it's at the LA Staples Center in LA, and I was so nervous. It was the biggest stage I've ever presented at. I presented to a few thousand people beforehand, but never 10,000 people. And I'm brand new, so that means that I don't really have like the muscle memory of the story yet, and so
Yeah.
on. Don't really know most people here, and I would imagine they're all like judging this new leader coming in. CEO is there, everybody's there. It's like, wow, this is nerve wracking. I think it's one of the most nervous times I've ever been in my life. But what I did to kind of overcome that and nail it, I practiced. So I wrote out my presentation, then I wrote down kind of the script loosely what I wanted to say, and then I rehearsed it over and over again, both in front of a mirror, which is very uncomfortable to do, to stand there and try to do that. The mannerisms, what I would say when I would say it. I had two colleagues who were kind of working with me on this presentation who were helping me do some demos on stage and so on. And I would practice in front of them because you want a little bit of a live audience so you can also gauge the reaction of people. I think between practicing in front of them and maybe in front of the mirror, I might have practiced this like 50 or 60 times, right? Just to kind of get it so it's like in my bones. So when I stepped out on that stage, because I knew I was going to be nervous as hell came out on that stage, I had it in my bones, right? And so I get to the day, and I'm backstage. There's presenter after presenter. I'm there waiting. I'm getting mic'd up, and I'm standing there. I'm doing my Robin arms, like opening up my body to like get the energy going and so on. And I'm trying to do breathing exercise. I can I could just tell that the event staff thought like, is this guy okay? Is he gonna be okay? It's like is he gonna faint? Or like he looks like he's really nervous. And I was, of course, but I'm also just like trying to get the energy going so I could like prepare myself. You don't want to come like cold out on stage. I always think you want to like rehearse a little bit, open up the energy. Even if I go into an internal presentation for like 10 people at a board meeting, I try to do a little bit of Rob Noms, open up myself to get the energy going. But this one was a big one. And so finally they call my name. Now presenting the next presenter, Robin Daniels. I walk on stage to my walk on music, very exciting. And I walk out and I'm like, yeah, what's up, everyone? And I knew I had it, right? And I practiced it. Even though I was nervous, I knew like, this is my moment to shine. And honestly, this is one of the things that elevated my position within WeWork. I come in, there's a lot of superstars working at this company, but everyone saw this. And I think it was one of the better ones I've done in my career, if I'm honest about it. But suddenly it gave me a huge spotlight and forum to be like, people would start coming to me and be like, we want you involved in this project. Can you lead this part of the business? I ended up getting more and more responsibility because there was such, I think, confidence in my ability, but it came a lot from that initial early presentation where I ran up in front of everybody, like in my within 3 weeks, and kind of nailed that communication that I had about the vision of where we were going. And it was a good validation of just how important communication skills are. This is one of those moments where it required a lot of practice, knowing the fundamentals of what makes a good presentation, right? Because there was some presenters up on this stage, let me be honest, who you could tell had not rehearsed and they were really nervous and they were awful. And it's just like, and I didn't want to be one of them.
Yeah, and I think you hit on, what I hear as well is like, because I agree, practice,
Mhm.
there is no substitution for, I always say the
Uh,
three most important P's of presentations is practice, practice, and practice. Like, so 100%. But what I hear in your story is this idea of say yes to
yeah, yeah.
something when you're not ready, and then prepare like a badass,
Mhm.
because there's a lot of people who
Yeah,
would think
yeah.
like, you want me on day 14 to present to 18,000 people, can I do that next year please? Like, so I think like one
Yeah,
of the
yeah,
things that I've definitely learned and seen with other people is that
yeah.
you will never be ready 100%
No,
for things like that. You've just got to
no.
commit, say yes, and then just prepare like a
Mhm.
badass. And I think like that's, I think, a
Yeah, yeah,
great
yeah,
lesson for people. And it doesn't have to be 18,000
yeah.
people. It can also be,
No, no,
want to
no.
present at the end of this team meeting or department meeting. So,
Mhm, mhm.
and I think the saying yes
Yeah, yeah.
is not easy for people, but I think that's
No.
take the opportunity.
But that's kind of also my philosophy in life. Say yes to these moments that push the boundaries of you and your capabilities. I presented to the board. Or, I mean, it's a small meeting, 10 PK the first time, but it was really around like I learned again like more preparation, more knowledge, and so on. I mean, it's a good presentation. It's really again that combination of information and entertainment, but also kind of like the confidence that you have, of course, and the knowledge that you have more knowledge than the people who are maybe listening to you, I think is important. But then there's so many different hacks. I mean, we all have different styles. Some people use humor really well. I'm not never been that kind of person. I'm more about the personal stories and the connection and my energy and so on. But lots of different ways you really use to kind of connect with people. I use more, I think, humor when I'm a little hit or miss, but I really admire people who do it well. There's a lot of people who do that super well. This kind of gets the audience loosened up and laughing and and so on. But yeah, it's just and when I think about it, I'm like, I still feel like I'm improving every day because it's just so critical. And it's nowadays with there's so many different kinds of communication. I think a lot about as well. For the last many, many years, I've always had global teams, but of course now with the rise of video conferencing and so on, that's now become the predominant way of communication. And so you also kind of have to modify how you connect. One-on-one on a Zoom call is very different than a group meeting on a Zoom call, right? And so you have to kind of be mindful of that. But then you also, I think that the next level, that maybe another level, is really understanding the mental model of people you're communicating with, how they see the world, and understanding their styles as well. And it goes both for you, but also the person I think you're communicating with. So, for example, a lot of people I think mistake that you have to be really extrovert to be a great communicator or presenter. I don't think that's the case necessarily at all. I think that that's a misnomer. It's more around teaching yourself. It might mean that you have to push yourself a little further. Maybe let's say if you're introverted versus extroverted, but everybody can kind of learn this. These are skills that I think you can learn. I have two people who I've worked with in the past. One super smart, right? Somebody that, but when she spoke, she was oftentimes, you could tell the little lack of confidence in her voice, and a little shy to speak up, and so on. Versus another one, but she was very introverted. There was another woman I worked with, also quite introverted, but when she spoke, she didn't speak often, but when she spoke, a lot of confidence, a lot of conviction, right? And so it's like the difference. I mean, they're both introverts, but one just had that different style of communication. And they wouldn't, neither of them would speak up that often because they were kind of shy. But when one did, he was seen as nearly apologetic, like, "Oh, I'm sorry to be here in the room, and I want to say something." Versus the other one's like, "Okay, I've listened now. I've got something to say. Here's what." And it was so striking, the difference in that communication style, right? And people's inability to connect with that or listen to it. And they're both like equally smart, some of the brightest people I've met. But I could tell that one person was probably going to go further based on that skill alone versus being that timid voice. Where, because if that's how you're acting in a small meeting, how are you going to command the presence of a much bigger, maybe more senior crowd and so on, right?
Yeah.
So it's not about speaking a lot or being super extroverted, like I think a lot of people think. No, 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 it's about that confidence and the ability to communicate clearly and succinctly and with passion. I think those are very, very, very important skills.
Yeah, and I've definitely seen. I was literally talking to somebody about this yesterday, but I've seen in the last 15 years of
Mm,
knowing
mm,
many, many speakers and many, many presenters is that there's actually a significant proportion of them are introverts, and there is something actually being an introvert is you can
okay.
have a communication superpower because maybe you're more likely to
Mhm.
prepare and do the script and there's a lot of
Yeah,
things you'll do internally to prepare for it more than maybe like
yeah,
you and me that are more extroverts. But like,
yeah,
but yeah, so I definitely 100% do
mm,
not see being an
mm,
introvert
mm,
as a barrier. If anything, it's almost the
mm.
opposite. So yeah, I think
Totally. It's a secret for me actually is I think I'm quite borderline. I've done a lot of these personalities. I mean, I people always assume I'm a super extrovert, and I come across that way in many ways. But when I do a presentation, whether or not that's like a half a day or even like an hour or 45 minutes, I'm fairly exhausted after because I really like give it
Mhm.
my all, and I need a little space to myself, a little time for myself just to recover. Um, and then I'm fine, but it really kind of takes a lot for me. I mean, I've even started doing this hack where I have my Apple Watch and I put it on yoga mode when I start a presentation to kind of see what my heart rate is and how many calories I burn. And
Nice.
it's really
Yeah.
interesting. I mean, when I did a 1 hour presentation, and I burned around 350 calories or so. Like, and my
Yeah.
heart rate is certainly elevated. It's like in zone two nearly. It's like because I'm like giving it my all when I'm up there in front of people. You should
My,
try it.
my
It's really thing.
Mine would be terrible because like I use mine for running, and it also has like this relax reminder. If it picks
Yeah,
up your
yeah, yeah.
relax, it'd be like it buzzes and tells you to relax. And I'm now visualizing that when I'm either in a meeting or on a stage, and it's like you need to relax.
Just relax. No, I can't relax right now.
Okay, so I'm imagining somebody listening to this conversation, they're junior, middle management. Like,
Mhm,
where should they start? They're like, okay, I'm with you. I get it. I want to
mhm,
get better at this communication thing.
mhm.
Where should they
Yeah.
start?
I mean, try to do all the things that I kind of mentioned: read books, listen to podcasts, watch YouTube videos. There's so many great ones. There's great TED talks out there on this stuff. But that's getting knowledge is one thing. There's no substitute for putting this into practice. So what can you do? Go on some courses, do improv, take acting lessons, but also go to your manager and say, "Hey, for the next team meeting, can I lead it?" Yeah, for most people, that's pretty daring, honestly. Or we have something coming up here, an event. Do you mind if I say a few words for 5, 10 minutes about whatever it is? Give an update on my area or tell something that's happened recently that I think everybody should know about. Start putting yourself in these situations. So if you're junior, you're just coming up through the ranks, you're just starting out your career. Start putting yourself in these situations that will naturally make you feel uncomfortable. And that's honestly super unnatural to do because everybody likes comfort and being kind of in their space where they're happy, but start putting yourself in those where you can tell you're even thinking about it makes you feel a little uncomfortable. Like if you're thinking about, oh, we have a team of 20 people, and speaking in front of them makes me nervous. That's usually a good sign.
Yeah.
It's a good sign that you should probably start putting yourself in those situations. Kind of like, I've been in marketing most of my career, and I always say there's kind of like three different levels of marketing: tactical, strategic, and epic. There's really three different levels of anything: tactical, strategic, and epic. And I always kind of say, once you come and present these epic ideas to me, um, unless they make me feel a little bit uncomfortable, they're probably not epic enough, meaning that there's probably like fairly obvious that we should be already doing this. But the epic ones usually make me go, should we do this? Can we do this? What will people think? But I think it's the same, honestly, when it comes to getting yourself to the next level. If you're thinking about going and visiting a customer, speaking at your next team meeting, giving the next update for the department you're in or something, and it starts making you feel uncomfortable, that's probably a good sign that you have some skills that you need to learn
Yeah.
around this. So I would start doing that as much as you can. But there's really, as much as I'd love to think that you could get all the knowledge you need from listening and learning, can't. You just can't. You have to go out there because there's nothing like being in front of other people to make you really realize, wow, how far I have to go with this skill. Like it requires tremendous courage and practice in order to become a really great presenter. Nobody is born a great presenter. Nobody, I mean, some people are probably more naturally there than others, but nobody's kind of born. You have to kind of learn it over time. And so start putting yourself in those situations. But the practice, nothing can substitute. And I would even go as far to say, if you can nail it internally, I oftentimes find internal presentations much harder than external ones because they know me so well. The external ones, like I was speaking at an event in June in London, festival of work in front of 1,000 people. I was slightly nervous, but it didn't really bother me because I don't know any of these people who were there versus going in front of the board meeting for a couple of hours, or going, we did our company kickoff in Portugal in January in front of 200 people. I was more nervous then, I think, than I
Hmm.
was, in London last month. And so internally, if you can master that, great. But even if you don't have the opportunity internally, go seek out the opportunities externally. Join clubs, do some acting lessons, improv, all this kind of stuff. Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's great advice. And I think what I'm
Mhm.
hearing is like, find the opportunities that don't overwhelm you to begin
Yeah,
with,
yeah,
and get
yeah,
some
yeah,
reps in and start
yeah,
to figure out like, okay, where am I good? Where do I need to
mhm,
improve? But yeah,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
yeah, it's something I've seen speaker after speaker after speaker that it's, yeah, you've
yeah.
got to, the practice is everything.
The practice, the putting it into practice, getting kind of those reps under. I mean, it's like it's just true of anything in life, right? I mean, I'm sure, Spencer, you have all the knowledge in the world you need about how to live the ultimate healthy life, right? I gotta exercise this much, I gotta eat this, but putting it into practice is very different, much
Oh
harder,
yes.
right?
No, no, no,
Right?
Robin, I'm perfect across the board, of course.
Of course, of course, of course. Like we all are. We all. I mean, I have all the knowledge I need, right? I know exactly what to eat, when to eat it, all that stuff. How much to exercise. Doesn't mean I do it now, like because it's hard. It's hard. It's hard putting yourself out there and following, having that rigor and discipline, right? So you have to. I mean, like theory versus practice is very very different. I mean, it's my biggest. And you can do it small, right? Find a mentor. Like I said, I think that's another key hack, and then start. Asking them for feedback. Usually it's more safe in kind of that environment. Hey, every time we meet, I'd love at the end of our, chat, just like give me some feedback on what you think I could be doing better. Like what do you think about my communication style, my interpersonal style, my EQ, anything I can do to level up? I think asking that in a group meeting can't really do that. But asking one on one with somebody you trust and look up to and admire, absolutely, you can ask that. Of
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. And I think people love to be asked. So I think it's,
course, of
they
course.
might
Yeah.
not think about doing it or offering
Yeah.
it, but when asked, I think
Uh,
most people will be, yeah, will
uh,
be very.
uh, uh,
So I want to give you in a moment, like, a chance to tell people how they can connect with you and where they should go to learn more about you. But have you got any final words, final advice, or anything that we haven't covered that you wanted to?
I would say nowadays the communication styles are really different. A lot of it now happens async. A lot of it happens on Teams, Slack, all these kind of, and you have to also learn how to use those as communication tools as well, because a lot of times we're not as with each other as much as we used to be. And I don't know if that's a great thing or a bad thing. I think that the verdict is still out on that in many different ways. But it doesn't really change the fact that you have to learn how to use these different ways of communication. Sometimes it's offline video. Sometimes it's these kind of, where you're in video conferencing. Sometimes it's these kind of communication tools like Slack and Teams and others and Discord. But you have to kind of learn how to use them all differently. You have to learn, I think, how to, depending on who it's with. That's kind of a key hack. But my biggest advice is really, yeah, go seek out discomfort. Go seek out a little bit of pain. That will help you grow the most.
Yeah, definitely. Because let's face it, this is what's going to help you go beyond middle management, and the return on that investment is super great. So it's a worthwhile endeavor for sure. Great.
Oh,
So how can people connect with you? Where should they go
uh,
to learn more about you? You have a lot of great stuff out there. So
yeah, no, thank you. Connect with me on LinkedIn. Just go find me, Robin Daniels. Yeah, I'm not hard to find there. You can also connect with me at robin@sensei.com. That's the company I work at. We are kind of a company focused on delivering human success for people. Connect with me there. But I'm always happy to kind of have a chat. If it's relevant for you and for me, love
yeah,
to.
perfect. And I'll put a link to your LinkedIn profile under the video so people can just click on it.
Perfect,
But
perfect.
yeah, all that remains is to say thank you very much for sharing some of your journey and experience with us. I think there is a ton of value there for people, especially if they're middle management and thinking of like, okay, how do I get to that next step? So thank you very much.
Thanks. Thanks for inviting me, Spencer, and it's great to see you.
Yeah, and I'll see you next time.